Hi! So, sasagutin ko tong question na paano ka natutulungan ng Radyo Eskwela sa iyong pag-aaral. Natutulungan nga ako na mapadali ang aking pag-aaral na para na akong sa face-to-face class na yun nga lang, wala akong mga friends, ingay, pero sakto lang yung 30 minutes na i-deliver ng teacher na yung speaker ang lesson pa talaga. I am Margie Balik sa Kanta Mundong, 7 Catholic student from San Agustin National High School. Sa Radyo Eskwela, patuloy ang edu-action.
Your communication hub and literary arts center of SDO Isabela. SDO English Academy.
An analogy describes the relationship between words. Subject, verb, or teacher.
One hand. English Academy.
Hello dear listeners, especially to all the grade 7 learners out there. It's really official. We are now on the 4th quarter of this school year. It's such a fantastic time of being with you through Radyo Eskwela sa Isabela. I know you have gained learnings and realizations from the number of months that we are together. And today, we are blessed to have another episode of useful and practical learning only here in English Academy. I'm Teacher Terence, always on the go, your teacher through radio. To start our discussion today, we will listen to a conversation. The conversation revolves around the following characters. We have Fina, Rochelle, Gab, and Mrs. Vides. They are discussing among each other if what food deserves to be a national dish in the Philippines. Fina says it's lechon. Rochelle claims it's adobo. Gab says it's sinigang. While listening, observe how the characters communicate their agreement and disagreements with each other. Are you ready? Here is the conversation.
When it comes to food, Filipinos are known for lechon baboy. That is why it should be the national dish. I don't think lechon baboy is the food that makes Filipinos well-known, Fina. It's adobo. It's actually the most reviewed Filipino food worldwide.
Oh yes, you're right, Rosel. Adobo is a well-known Filipino dish, but I think sinigang deserves more to be the national dish. It's a comfort food and always eaten during celebrations.
Did you say food during celebrations, Gab? I think you forgot that lechon baboy is the star of celebrations. Yes, lechon baboy is the star of celebrations, but it is not a native Filipino dish. It's originally foreign.
Wait. Even with adobo actually, it is also a food influenced by other countries.
Oops, I saw that, Rochelle. Why do you have to raise your eyebrow at me when you disagree with what I say? What? I also saw you crossing your arms at me. Are you fighting Fina, Rochelle, and Gab?
No, Mrs. Vides, we are just discussing if what Filipino dish deserves to be our national dish.
Oh, is that so? Come with me and I will read to you historical and educational researches about the Philippines' national dish.
Yes,
Mrs. Vides.
And I'm back, dear learners. Did you listen well to the conversation? That's great. Going back to my question earlier, how did the characters express their agreements and disagreement among each other? Did you just say Rochelle raised an eyebrow to Fina? Correct. That's actually a way to show disagreement. What about when Fina crossed arms to Rochelle? You're right too. It's also a way of disagreeing to someone. What about the words that they said to show agreement? That's a sharp memory, learners. Gab said, "You're right," to Rochelle. And Rochelle said to Fina, "Yes, lechon baboy is the star of celebrations." What the characters said and did are examples of verbal and nonverbal communication. Have you heard about them before? If not, don't worry because we will learn about them today. I have a question for you learners. What is communication? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this word? I bet you think of someone who is talking to another person. Am I right? I knew it. That's actually the first concept that people think when they hear the word communication. Specifically, that refers to interpersonal communication. Automatically, we connect communication to speaking. However, communication is not limited to speaking alone. Communication is a complex process that includes variety of ways and forms. In definition, communication is the sum of all the things that a person does while interacting with others. It also involves a continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. While communicating, people share and exchange their feelings, ideas, and thoughts. Can you still follow? Let's continue. Interpersonal communication is the process of exchange of information, ideas, and feelings between two or more people through verbal or non-verbal methods. It often includes face-to-face exchange of information in a form of voice, facial expressions, body language, and gestures. One question, learners. What is the difference between verbal and non-verbal communication? Are you ready to know more about them? Listen very well then. Alright, let's start with verbal communication. Verbal communication refers to the use of words for communication purposes. This is the more obvious form of communication because it explicitly tells what a person wants to convey. Verbal communication has two forms. These are oral and written communication. When we say oral communication, this includes all types of communication that use speaking. Hence, this communication needs a sense of hearing to understand it. These are face-to-face talks, telephone conversations, delivery of speech and presentations, video conferences, Zoom meetings, and the like. On the other hand, written communication needs the sense of sight to get the meaning. This includes letters, signages, posters, and anything that uses printed text to communicate. Will you clap your hands if you understood the differences between the two? That's great. Let's continue with our discussion. Verbal communication is easy to understand, especially when there are no communication barriers such as the language used, noise, affective filters, and other physical barriers. Verbal communication is everywhere. We hear it from the people around us, from the television, radio, and other devices. When somebody says good morning to you, that's verbal communication. When somebody sends you a text message through your phone, that's verbal communication. But did you know that verbal communication is only 7% of our total communication? According to the study by Dr. Albert Merabian, 93% of our communication is non-verbal in nature. Amazing, right? Now, let's talk about non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication typically refers to hand and body movements, gestures, facial expressions, physical appearance, artifacts, space, and others. In other words, non-verbal communication refers to the behavioral aspect of communication, both intentional and unintentional. Hence, non-verbal communication is also regarded as communication without words. It is so powerful that it reveals a lot about our message as communicators. When someone frowns about what we say, that may mean that he or she disagrees with our statement. Or when someone claps his or her hand while listening to us, that may mean that he or she is amazed of our statement. Generally, there are 6 types of nonverbal communication. These are facial expressions, gestures, proximity, touch, eye contact, and appearance. I have an easier way to remember them. Will you say
Fajepti.
very good?
Fajepti.
As in F, A, G, I, P, T, E, and A. Say it again.
Fajepti.
Fa stands for facial expressions. Ge for gestures. P for proximity. T for touch. E for eye contact. And A for appearance. It's easier, right? Now, let's learn about them one by one. Let's start with facial expressions. Facial expression is a type of nonverbal communication that helps us convey our message. A communicator may look happy, sad, angry, or excited while speaking or listening. This way, the message conveyed will be more understood. For example, when somebody says directly, "I am happy about that," but his or her face seems to be not, this clearly tells that the listener should be careful in filtering the message. Now, let's have the second type of nonverbal communication, which is gesture. When we speak, gesture can make our message stronger or weaker. When somebody points out something while speaking to clarify what he or she means is an example of how gesture contributes to the communication. This time, let's have proximity. Proximity is how close are we to our listener or audience. When we are too close to the one we are communicating, this may intimidate them or make them feel small. On the other hand, when we are too far from our audience, this may lead to confusion or not clear communication. So, remember to always have an enough distance when communicating to someone. Are you still following?
Alright!
I can see your patience. Let's now have the fourth type of nonverbal communication, which is touch. Shaking an audience hand or putting hand on someone's shoulder are examples of nonverbal cues that can affect meaning, simply because touch communicates meaning. That's pretty simple, right? The fifth type of nonverbal communication is eye contact. Making and maintaining eye contact with someone when verbally communicating or when listening show that there is interest going on. Having a good eye contact conveys honesty, sincerity, or even power when communicating. Now, let's have the sixth type of nonverbal communication, which is appearance. Appearance pertains to our clothing, hair, or anything that tells how we look. During formal events, wear formal dress, wear a good-looking watch or jewelry. All these add to nonverbal communication. Were you able to get all the 6 types of nonverbal communication? That's awesome! Will you say what's the meaning of
Fajepti.
That's impressive! It means facial expression, gesture, proximity, touch, eye contact, and appearance. Now learners, let's test your understanding of today's lesson through a short quiz. I think you are now ready for it. Well then, bring out your pen and paper for our quiz. You will listen to different situations and then determine the appropriate feedback or strategy that you will do from the given choices. Write the letter of the best answer on your answer sheets. Are you now ready? Okay, let's start. This is the first situation. During the first day of school, Nena was nominated by her classmate as class president. But Nena is not interested about it. What should Nena do? Is it A, look at her classmate in a frowning face? Or B, raise her hands and say, I object, politely? C, stand and just say, I am not interested. I'll repeat it. During the first day of school, Nana was nominated by her classmate as class president. But Nana is not interested about it. What should Nana do? It is A, look at her classmate in a frowning face? Or B, raise her hands and say, I object, politely? Or C, stand and just say, I am not interested. Write your answer. Let's have number 2. Jerry is applying for a work. He is called for an interview. What is the best thing Jerry should say or do? Is it A, Jerry should wear a formal attire and speak fluently? Or B, Jerry should wear comfortable attire and use casual language? Or C, Jerry should shake hands with the boss immediately upon meeting? Once again, Jerry is applying for a work. He is called for an interview. What is the best thing Jerry should say or do? Is it A, Jerry should wear a formal attire and speak fluently? Or B, Jerry should wear comfortable attire and use casual language? Or C, Jerry should shake hands with the boss immediately upon meeting? What's the best answer? Let's proceed to number 3. Your friend has a big problem about their family. You come to him and give advice. What should you say and do? Is it A, have a 2 meters distance and say, I am just here for you? Or B, say, I am willing to help you, while looking at your phone? Or C, tap his shoulder and say, everything will be fine? I repeat, your friend has a big problem about their family. You come to him and gives advice. What should you do and say? Is it A, have a 2 meters distance and say, I am just here for you? Or B, say, I am willing to help you, while looking at your phone? Or C, tap his shoulder and say, everything will be fine? What's the best answer? Now, let's check if you got all these items correctly. The answer for number 1 is letter B. Number 2 is A. And number 3 is letter C. Did you get a perfect score? That's great. I hope that you learned a lot about verbal and nonverbal communication clearly from today's discussion. We are now on the last few seconds of our episode, and I am thankful that you always consider English Academy as your everyday habit. On behalf of the scriptwriter of this episode, Sir Laureano Pasco Jr., I am Teacher Terence Araliano, your teacher on air, saying, always remember to communicate with honesty and politeness because a good speaker speaks with integrity. Thank you and till next time. Goodbye!